Welcome to Monday Morning Happy Hour, Monday Tribe, the most important hour of the week. It is August 10th, 2020. Getting married in 2 months, which is crazy. So been busy with that. Hope you guys have all been doing really well as summer is winding down. I know kids starting to go back to school and sports ramping back up in this society right now, and just all trying to do our best. So I had one of my favorite topics prepared for today, and without further ado, jump right into it. And that is today, my favorite day. Now, some of you may notice this or strike your memory from Winnie the Pooh. And Lauren and I always say this ever since we saw that movie together. And, what day is it? And he says, today. And he says, my favorite day. And that really struck a chord with us. And knowing that, today is a great day to have a great day type mentality, and that carrying that, it can only be good. So today, my favorite day. So I want to talk about some ways to make today a great day, to make today your favorite day, and to be focused on today, because that tends to help, right? If you're not focused on today, it's hard to have a great day today. So there's going to be a few things we cover. One of those is getting back into micro practices a little bit deeper. Next is going to be A Traveler's Gift, which is my favorite book of all time. It was recommended to me when I saw Jim Tressel speak actually back in 2011 maybe, and he recommended this book. I said, all right, well, if Jim Tressel recommends it, it's probably not bad. So I picked it up, easy read. It's the only book in my life that I've ever read in one day, actually physically read. Nowadays, I listen to a ton of books versus reading because I'm a slow reader, but it's the only book I've ever read cover to cover the entire day. I'm pretty sure the entire thing was highlighted. It was absolutely amazing. I've listened to or read over 300 books since then, and it's still by and large my favorite one, not even close to any others. And there's some breakoffs of it, the 7 Decisions and the Traveler's Summit, which is really cool. And these are all by Andy Andrews. So I'm going to get into that a little bit and talk about a unique one, apologies and forgiveness, and just kind of how that wraps into being present and being around the people we love. And then there's this little bit of a fable called The King's 3 Questions that was told to me one time that has stuck with me and helps, do the right thing each day, at least try to. So we're jumping into the micro practices back from one of the first topics that we touched on. And these are just the little ways to stay centered and stay focused throughout your day. And even whether they're micro practices or even habits. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both. One of those, starting my day every single morning, my phone is across the room. So it takes me first going to bed at some point, making that committed decision to put the phone on, do not disturb, and just plug it in for the night is obviously a way to wind down. But then waking up each morning and knowing that my alarm's going off across the room and that I have to get up. And many of you have probably heard this before. I know I did a bunch of times before I actually did it. And go figure, you have to get out of bed to go turn your alarm off, which for me is the hardest part. I don't know if anybody else is similar, but once I'm up, I tend to do a pretty good job of just staying up and getting after it. At least sometimes, there's always that decision of don't get back in bed, but that decision's a lot easier to make when you're already out of bed, let alone all right, I need to get up versus already being out. So phones across the room, alarms across the room. Another thing is my pre-workout is ready to go right next to me, made the night before. Start sipping on that right away. Even if I do lay back down for a second, that starts to kick in, makes it easier to get up, coffee, whatever it might be for you. Third, I know that I have a lot of tasks in the morning that I committed to that I would do. So I told people yesterday, I'll have this to you tomorrow morning. My mornings tend to be very busy. So then getting that done before the gym, early morning emails and things like that, really helps me relieve anxiety for the day to get the tasks that I need done and kind of put them in the prioritization, my tasks that they need to be, and make me feel good about going into my day. Then really jumping into the day with a workout. That's the main thing that really gets the heart going, the mind going, the discipline going, and having a workout partner is the best thing possible there. And again, go figure. The things that they tell you are impactful and work, hold it from an accountability standpoint. So of course, need to make sure that I get there for them and fulfill my end of that relationship and that responsibility to be, a person who drives someone else and receive that gift in return. So those are more habit side of things. And the same way with, how you eat and exercise and just how the people you talk to and the things you read and surround yourself with. But the micro practice side of it. So if you remember my 2 micro practices that I talked about last time, one was the water boy skit where he's like, "You just won the bourbon bowl," and he's like, "I love mama." What do you want to say? He's like, "I love mama," and that makes me laugh automatically. It just makes me smile. Thinks of my mom in a funny movie. Those like series of Adam Sandler movies were just absolutely ridiculous and so good. And so Waterboy, I love mom. It just reminds me, football and those memories, some of those memories, but just the silliness of it, and Adam Sandler, of course, but ultimately makes me think of my mom, and just makes me realize in that moment that, whatever I'm thinking about isn't as serious as it probably is. I'm thinking that it is, and that, how can I get centered again and joyful again to attack what I need to do. And the other one was a little more deeper for me. And that's when something's really, really tough, or I just, really am having a hard time doing what I need to do. Then that's the da 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 da, and all that is that's the kind of melody to a song that always reminds me of Lauren. And I'm like, okay, well, do this for her. She's your rock. This is what's your vision that you guys have for your life. These are the tasks. This is the work that needs done. Do the work. Sometimes you just have to do the work. These different principles and different tactics, like all that's great, good stuff. But sometimes what it comes down to is just doing the work. And I know that's not always the fun part to hear and to do, of course, and to execute. But sometimes it comes down to just doing the work. And so when I really just need that extra kick to focus on that vision and what the life that I want to be able to provide for her and for us and for our future family, then that helps tremendously. So if you've maybe thought about doing some micro practices already, or you have been doing them even much more often than me, wonderful, or just having never even considered it, I really challenge you today to come up with a micro practice, even if it's a simple 2-word thing, or could be something like people wear stuff on their wrist, like just little reminders or little things that you can use to center yourself and to truly, and make sure it works. I mean, don't say, oh, if I think about this, then I'm going to think about that. Like really make sure and spend time and sit with it and be like, okay, this is something that is going to trigger an emotional response or trigger the response that I want. And when you're confident in that, and if it's not working, then you need to change it. So find something that works for you. Practice that today. Micro practice. That is like one of the coolest terms ever. Micro practice. Like practice makes perfect. Practice is how we all get better at everything. And this is a micro way, small commitment, easy peasy, lemon squeezy way to just like give something a shot and see how much it can help you and just stay focused. So that's all for micro practices today. Now jumping into Traveler's Gift. This is seriously, like I said, my favorite book of all time. My favorite book of all time is The Traveler's Gift. Read it in one day. It's not huge. It's like normal looking size book. And Andy Andrews is awesome. And he meets the main character in this book. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's kind of a Ghost of Christmas Past type deal where he meets 7 historical figures. And in some of them, they tell you who they are right away. In others, the chapter will start and he's just, the main character is just kind of going through the town or through the scenery, and it's being described to you what he's seeing, and you're starting to get a feel for what era of time or what location he is and who he's about to meet. And the whole thing is each lesson or each principle is delivered by a historical character that exemplified that principle, and he gets to learn it like side by side with that person in their present day. So he gets dropped into, I don't want to ruin him for you guys because that's really a good, really enjoyable aspect to the book is experiencing each new character and each new principle with the main character, like you're there with them as well. But I will share what those 7 principles are because they appear, it kind of have the chapter titles and are the experiences or the takeaways that you're supposed to have from each one. So I will share what those seven are. And the first one is the buck stops here. And the buck stops here talks mainly about personal responsibility. And so briefly to describe how that can make today your favorite day, just having that personal responsibility for the things that you need to get done that day, that you're putting your name on, that you're representing the work that you're putting in, that is your contribution to the outcome you desire for that day or for your team or for your family, whatever it might be. So what is your personal responsibility that day to yourself, to others, to your work, to your life? What is your personal responsibility of the things? The buck stops here. These are the things that define the way I behave. These are the things that define the way that I go about my day. These are the things that define how I treat people and my character. So the buck stops here is that sense of personal responsibility. I mean, there's 7 of these. They're just amazing. The next one is seek wisdom. Seek wisdom and seek understanding. And this one I know is very difficult for me sometimes because I like to think that I'm like trying to figure it out. You know, I'm already searching for the solution. And this isn't always about searching for the solution, rather than just searching for meaning and searching for that extra layer of appreciation or that extra layer of how it intertwines with other moving pieces and things that are happening in the world or in your life. And so seeking wisdom, seeking understanding, seeking the value out of different moving pieces in your life. So that second one is seek wisdom, not always being, I always love to try to be solution focused. What's the solution? Let's fix the problem. But sometimes problems are better understood than they are fixed, because they're more of an evolving, fluid, nimble situation rather than a binary equation that can be solved. It's more of a fluid situation. So sometimes problems are better understood than they are solved, which is still tough for me to wrap my mind around. The third one is a person of action. So rewinding real quick, first one is a buck stops here, the sense of personal responsibility. Second one is seeking wisdom. And then the third one is I'm a person of action. And this one in the story is super cool. And it talks about some of our historical figures, you know, in the military in this case, and just how this landscape, how the landscape of our country and the world really was impacted by, or can be impacted by, a decision here or there made by some of these military leaders back in the day, and currently, of course, too. But person of action, really just having courage to take action, not have that static friction to the things that we do, and to be a person of action, not being someone who sits around, but someone who is at least failing forward, if you've heard that before. So being a person of action. And that helps with this next principle, which is having a decided heart. Having a decided heart. Again, this one, I remember I highlighted like the whole chapter. And one of the metaphors that they put in here for this one, and this talks about having that confidence or just clarity with your decision making. It doesn't mean you always know for sure that you're making the right decision, but again, being a person of action and then having a decided heart, how those two things kind of can go together. And one of the metaphors it used was, it talks about if you have a thorn bush, or kind of one of those prickly ball things that, you know, are out there in the woods, and if you grab that thing and you just clench it in your fist super tight and you just go for it, you just and you crush it, that it'll turn to dust. You'll literally just smother it, and it won't hurt your hand, and it'll be pieces that you just drop out of your hand. Like a leaf, it'll just be like nothing to crush it. But if you try to touch that softly and you kind of touch it gently with your finger, it'll prick you. And I thought that made a ton of sense for certain situations in life where you really got to grab it by the horns, lack of a better terminology, versus being and just tiptoeing your way in. And that's where then the wisdom kind of comes in too. So all of these things are just a daily piece of work, but having a decided heart and clarity with your decision making and being confident when you're going for it, and the contagiousness of that, especially from a leadership standpoint, I truly believe is wild, and a really cool story, and how it applies to the historical character in that book. And next one is a little deep, but it's today I choose to be happy. And this character in history had a tough time, but still chose to be happy. And their story and what they went through, many of you, I'm sure, already know once you read who it is. But today I choose to be happy. And that talks about a lot of things we've covered here already, where you're greeting each day with gratitude and appreciation, and what that does is for your mindset. And every single thing that you take part in, having that get to mentality versus have to, and how that gratitude really, your brain cannot process pain and gratitude at the same time. So the more it's processing gratitude, the less it's processing pain. It's just math. And so at that point, really looking forward and being optimistic and hopeful and gratitude, all of those things are in the same family about what's happening in your life. And you'll start to see those things evolve, and what you focus on expands type deal. And so today I choose to be happy is one of the other principles. There's two more here. The next one is greet each day with a forgiving spirit. And then I'm going to get into this with apologies and forgiveness here in a second, but greeting each day with a forgiving spirit, that's always a tough one for me. And then the last one, arguably my favorite, and you'll recognize it if you've been listening closely to my mission statement, with this is persisting without exception. I will persist without exception. Never giving up. It's that simple. Never giving up. Persisting without exception. And this one is a total like mind F, like whenever you read this in the book and the character and how it, but he visits a room of things that never were because they weren't finished. And the things that would exist, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. The things that would exist if you kept going, the things that would have happened if you kept going, the memories that would have been created if you kept going, the things that you would have provided for other people if you kept going, the lifelong memories you would have with people if you kept going, the joy you would have in each day creating the life that you created because you kept going. And this persisting without exception, doing that work to get to the outcome, and no matter what, without exception, having that level of persistence is freaking cool. So that's the seventh one. Andy Andrews, A Traveler's Gift, an absolutely incredible book. And all of his stuff is awesome. But the other two that spin off of that are the Seven Principles or the Seven Decisions. And the other one is A Traveler's Summit, which is a kind of a sequel to Traveler's Gift, which is wild and really puts these things into action and really cool. So apologies and forgiveness as we move through this, the next bullet point here, and bringing in to kind of greeting each day with a forgiving spirit. Lauren and I have been going through our pre-Cana stuff for the wedding, which has been really cool. And some of the stuff that they've been sharing with us has been about, sometimes it's hard. The hard things to do are apologize and forgive. And how good does it feel when you do either of those things, though? That's what's so cool. Is anytime I think about how difficult it might be to apologize or to forgive somebody for something, I just think about but it feels so good to do it. So let's just do it. Let's just not overthink it. Let's just do it. Or let's at least try to do it. And I'm by no means an expert on this stuff, but just embracing the importance of being able to apologize when you're not right, or when you've done something imperfect or harmful to someone else or to yourself. Being able to forgive yourself, I know, is a big one too. That's something I'm always working on, forgiving myself and not being critical of myself, but being able to forgive and move on and take the extra steps I need, and not be thinking about the thing I did yesterday, today, and forgiving myself for that. And again, going into today and making today my favorite day. So just being open to the possibility and to the power of a good apology, and accepting an apology, forgiving and accepting forgiveness. Those are things that I encourage you to learn more about, and just be more in tune with opportunities to accept an apology, to give an apology, to ask for forgiveness, to give forgiveness, and let people know. Let people know who are forgiven, and forgive yourself. Say it out loud, whatever needs to be done. And I know these aren't as hoorah as some of those principles in A Traveler's Gift, but I really feel like this is an important way to really be present with one another and with what you're doing each day, is to rinse and repeat and forgive and forget, but moving on in a tactful way, in an intentional way, from some of these things that you may be looking back on and not feel the best about. And so having an apology and a forgiveness kind of to close those things out, so you can create a more positive loop moving forward, I feel is very, very important. Wrapping up today, King's 3 questions. I heard this a few years ago, and I've loved it ever since. And these King's three questions is a fable where the king is asking a wise man three questions. Well, the wise man actually asked the king. Yeah, the wise man asked the king and says, well, what is the most important time? And the king's like, I don't know. What's the most important time? And the wise man says, now, because it's the only time you can control. So the wise man says, now, what's the most important time? Now. You've probably heard that before. I'm like, okay, got it. I'm hearing this. I'm like, all right, got it, guy. Now is the most important time. Cool. Then he says, what's the most important thing to do? And he thinks about it for a second. He says, the most important thing to do is, I don't know, you got to figure out what's the most important thing to do. And he says, and that's to serve the person that you're interacting with. And he's like, serve the person you're interacting with. Okay. So the most important time is now. The most important thing to do is to serve the person you're interacting with. Okay. And then the next one is, he says, well, if the most important time is now, and the most important thing to do is to serve the person you're interacting with, then the third thing is to understand who you're interacting with. And that could be yourself. He says, well, what if I'm interacting with multiple things? It's like, well, focus on what's the most important thing to do, and that's to serve whoever you're interacting with. So starting with that service level is the most crucial layer to doing the most important thing and doing it now, is that service level, servant leadership, service to in your household, service to your community, service to your society, service to the things that you just want to get done in that day and need to get done and are going to benefit you. And doing them now is obviously the only time you can control, and serving the most important, serving the thing you're interacting with, the person you're interacting with, is the most important thing to do at that time. So kind of a little fable that, a king is always trying to learn more, right? And there's this wise man seeking wisdom, one of the principles in the traveler's gift. So now is the only time we can control. Serve the person we're interacting with. Start with service whenever you're trying to prioritize, what's the most important thing to do at that time, and that law of reciprocity and things like that. It's going to make it work out. And I can't stress enough, thank you guys for listening today, making today your favorite day. Today is my favorite day. It gives me chills to even think about, being able to talk about stuff like this with you guys, because it just works. Today is my favorite day, and I hope it is your favorite day too. And finishing up with the journal prompts, and then again, encouraging you tenfold to take the next 30 minutes or so that you have left in this happy hour and do what you need to do to get your mind right, get your body right, to have a great week, and focus on the things you need to do to be successful for yourself and others this week. And one of those is going to be journaling. First journal prompt is, who comes to mind that feels extremely present when you are together, and what makes them so present? Who comes to mind that feels extremely present when you are together, and what makes them so present? The next one is, what distracts you the most? How could you reduce that distraction today? And then during what activities do you feel present? So kind of the opposite of that. So what times do you feel distracted? And during what activities do you feel most present? What distracts you the most? How could you reduce that distraction today? And during what activities do you feel present? Last one, what was your favorite principle from A Traveler's Gift, those 7 principles, and how can you put it into action today? How can you try to enact that principle today? Those are your journal prompts. This has been Monday Morning Happy Hour. Thank you, Monday Tribe. Enjoy your week and make today your favorite day. Make today great. Talk to you next week.